So thank you so much, and I would like to give the floor to Sabine Feisst from the Arizona State University, who will chair our last session of the conference, the eighth session. We have three speakers, so the floor is yours, Sabine. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to session 8, the last session of the Renewable Music Conference. And I'm very pleased to chair this panel featuring three speakers. Yeah, I'm happy to introduce Mateusz. Let's switch to Mateusz Bień. He is a contemporary composer, sound engineer, and amateur programmer. And he currently holds the position of head of composition at the composition department at Penderecki Academy of Music in Krakow. And today he will speak about new life for old electronics. Please take it away, Mateusz Bień.
Thank you. Let's try if I will have more luck. I would like to tell you a few stories. First is the real story. I have a banking account, like probably all of you. And one day I would like to check if my money are still in my bank account. So I try to connect to my bank account, but I get an information that my device, let's say the laptop, and my browser is not compatible with the banking. They need a new version of browser to see if I have money or not. So I have to update my browser, but to do that, I discovered that it's not possible because to update my browser, I need to update my operating system. That's okay, I can do this. But when I start, I discover that it's not possible because, sorry, this operating system is no longer compatible with your computer. So you have to buy a new computer. I don't know if I have any money because I can't get to my account. And of course, we can talk about computer. We can talk about any other electronic devices like cellular phones or tablet. But I think this is the story you probably have had someday. This is one of the example. Everything seems to be right, with one exception. That day before, I was able to check if my money are there with the same computer, with the same browser, and with the same operating system. So nothing changed, but now I can't do anything. That's a real story. Now, a science fiction story, it's about the movie, probably you know this movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. There are many, stood still, sorry. There are many remakes of this movie. The last one was done in 2008, if I remember correctly, but the first version was from 1951, and it's very short. It's about the alien who came here to the Earth to destroy everything human made, to destroy humans and everything they made, because we are a virus for the planet. And there's two main characters discussing, as you see, one of them is Keanu Reeves, he is an alien, and the scientist who's first trying to help him, but then when she discovered that what is a real reason to visit the Earth, she tried to ask him, don't do that. And during the discussion, there are just two sentences I would like to present. She told him, I mean humans, we can change, we can pay the price. I would like that we hold on for these two sentences. We can change, it's about the mental change. So what we are doing right now is a mental change. So we start thinking about the nature and we are discussing about it and so on. But the second part about that we can pay the price is more precise. The price, it's amount of money, amount of time, or any other goods. And if you ask how much, probably you will never get the answer, or maybe some people will tell you that's enormous amount of money. The same story in music world. I would like to show you One example, it's a Scarlett interface made by Focusrite. Probably you know that interface. Most of you use the interfaces from Scarlett. This particular interface has several versions. It's version 1, then version 2, and version 3. If you have a version 1 and would like to have a software for version 3, from the same producer, it's not compatible. If you have the opposite, if you have the version 3 of the interface and the software from the version 1, it still is not compatible. In general, it's very hard to make this very popular device compatible with your system. Another example is about MuseScore. Probably everyone knows the MuseScore as a very good free editing software. But in the same time, there is something called a Muse Hub, which is the software used to download sound libraries for the MuseScore. If you have a MuseScore, you can run it on any computer. I tested MuseScore on Raspberry Pi, for example. So very small, very weak computer, and everything works without any problems. But to get the sound, it's not possible because you have to have quite new and quite powerful computer just to download the sound, not to play. This tool is not used to play the sound. It's only for downloading the sound. So I will tell you another sci-fi story, but before I go on, let's say that I decide that I will buy a new computer to get to my account. So now I stay with two computers. So I have the old one and then I have a new one. If you are a little older, like I am, and you have a family like I have, you probably stay with a lot of computers at home. I count that I have like 7 or 8 laptops at home. So now there's a problem what to do with them. At first, probably you discover that on some computer, you have your access to banking account, but on another one, you have your favorite plugins you would like to use to do your music. But then your last machine or the oldest machine just stays somewhere, and finally you get to idea that you have to get rid of this. So I would like to present you another picture. Do you know what movie it is? Probably you do know. It's more decent movie. So there are some pictures like this, and probably you guess right, it's a new version of Blade Runner. The problem is that this picture is not a picture from the movie. It's an actual picture from some places in Africa, as well as this one or this one. So we produce an enormous amount of electronics, and then we get rid of it, and we just don't think what is happening with that stuff. If we have a glass bottle, for example, and this glass bottle has a metal cap, it's very easy to disassemble this and separate into glass and metal. But if we have devices which are very sophisticated, it's very hard to dispatch them into components. So we are just trashing them. And this is one example of how many products are recycled. And if we look at the Africa, it's 0.9%. It means that for 1,000 computers, for example, only 9 are recycled. The rest is just stays there and looks like that. So my idea is to just give a new life to new computers, and I start thinking to old computers, sorry, and start thinking how we can do this. And I was looking for a hope, and I found this hope, of course, here in space. This is the ISS, so International Space Station. It looks like that, and probably maybe few of you knows that it's more than 25 years old. Probably none of you has a computer which is 25 years old, but this device works on the space and it has really 25 years old. Of course, you can say well, they are rackets. They just give some new stuff and maybe replace some elements of this one. So what about this? This is the Voyager. So it's more than 45 years old. So this is an electronic device which lives alone in space and still works after 45 or now probably 47 years. And what is the reason to having this device? This is one of the pictures. It's done, as you see from the distance of 6 billion kilometers. So it still works, and we can see us, as you see, all of us, from this extreme distance. So if you have an electronic device, probably you should answer some basic question. Can you communicate with this device? Can a device communicate with you? Does it perform at last a few functions it was made for? And is using the device safe? If you have these devices and they can really still work, you really should use them. And of course, there's a question how I should develop my music studio. So I create this sentence, so create a composer space center for your musical voyage. So think if you try to create your station, that you will need it for 25 or maybe for 50 years. When you start thinking in that way, probably you start to make completely different decisions. And maybe your decision will be like that. It's a contemporary stuff. So the analog devices or digital devices, we call it Eurorack. It doesn't look contemporary, but probably we can guess that it will work longer than our computer. There is no problem of operating system, of compatibility, and more stuff. What is the power of those devices? One device is for the one function. Usually it works in that way. So the computer we use for everything, now really everything, but the musical devices are used for one thing, for generate the sound. Maybe we have a MIDI controller, so they are used just to send the MIDI commands and so on. Of course, we should ask the question I mentioned here. Is it in that way that I have an old computer, so it's weaker or stronger than the contemporary device, hardware musical device? So I tried to test this, and this is an example. It's a contemporary musical instrument. It's done by a French firm, Audio Instruments. It's called Animafi, and it's a virtual physical modeling synthesizer. So it's monophonic and it has different algorithms inside. You can work on it to generate very acoustic, very specific and very natural sounding sounds. This device costs maybe around 1,000 euros, more or less. But the company also introduced an Anima V, which is the software which use exactly the same algorithms to make it a VST host, VST plugin, or just a standalone application. So I took the hardware device and also I took a very old laptop. This laptop is now 10 years old, so I can really buy it for really small amount of money. Usually for 20% of money, I need to spend for the hardware device. And I discovered that the hardware device is a monophonic instrument, but on the software version of the same device on the very old computer, I've got more or less 16 voice polyphony. So it's equal to having 16 devices like that. So my suggestion is, even if you have an old computer, maybe you can use it in that way. So just put it one instrument, one processor, something single to make it work, and you will discover that it's extremely efficient. You have to remember that in your computer, especially if it is a laptop, you have a screen, you have a camera, you have a speaker, you have a microphone, you have a keyboard, you have a mouse, and probably a lot of different sensors you can use in many, many ways. With Eurorack, we have single devices, but we really have to buy a lot of them, and it will be very, very expensive finally. Okay, so I test several softwares to be used as the only software on my computer, because the idea is that we just get rid of everything what is necessary, or get rid of everything what is not necessary, and leave the only necessary thing, and maybe a software we can install and run for our music project. I make some prerequisites, like I would like it to be free. That's obvious. It should be compatible with any computer platform, and if it will be compatible with mobile hardware, that will be great. It shouldn't have advanced graphic user interface, but it have to be nice. I am not a programmer, so I don't like to work with bad-looking software. That's me. It should have some kind of communication, because this is what I mentioned. If you can communicate with the device, you need some form of communication. Now, the most common, except in the media, of course, is just the Ethernet and UDP OSC, so Universal Data Protocol and Open Sound Control for communication. And if the software could be extended with scripts, that's probably enough, because even if the new version of the software will not be compatible with my old computer, I probably can add this functionality with scripting. So a few examples of software you can use. A pure data is, of course, most obvious choice, but the problem with it is that it looks quite awful. And also it has many versions. So there's a pure data, it's a pure with 2 version, and it's quite to find the right option. But from the other hand, probably you can do everything with it, and also port into pure data different programming languages or different script. So if you have your system running pure data, probably it will run forever, as long as your computer will not just collapse completely. Another tool is Carla. It's in general, it's a plugin host, but it has still more and more options to make it a standalone rack. It also can play audio files. It can also be controlled by OSC. It can behave like a sampler. So a lot of things you can do with Carla. It's completely free. Another thing is an element. And as you see, it's again very similar. So it looks like we have several boxes. They could be plugins, but they also could be, like you see, in audiophile players, routers. It could be extended using the Lua language. Another option is a Praxis Live. So it's the tool which is written in Java, and it's very similar to processing. Probably you have heard about the processing. So if you know Java, you can develop your own version of the Praxis Live, and everything, if you would like, everything what you would like to design could be designed with this tool. And again, it can communicate using the OSC and using MIDI, so you can send a request and get some responses. This tool is also used for encoding video, so it's not only for audio. Another tool is an Ossia. It's even more advanced. It's a platform where you can put, as well as the sound object, the video object, and different things. It could be extended with JavaScript if you know that language, but it also has a very nice idea of being a score of different elements. So every box is just read it from left to right. So it's like you put on your paper score different objects, and they can work. I tested this particular one in Raspberry Pi again. So my weakest tool is the Raspberry Pi. It's version 4, and it works without problems. Of course, with extended video, we will get some problems. But I am the musician, so I don't care about the video very much right now.
2 more minutes.
Okay.
2 more minutes.
Yes, I'm just finishing. So the last one is the bespoke synth. So it's another idea. It could be, again, it has a lot of small models. It could be extended by Python programming language. So and again, you can run it on any different platform. So just to get to the conclusion, this is the idea I would like to develop. So we have on all devices, they are all communicated. We can also use some kind of server for OSC commands, and they can communicate with them using the Ethernet. That's it. Here is the list of that software if you would like to check it by yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a very provocative presentation, very rich thoughts, and I would like to open the floor for questions.
I overwhelm people.
Comments?
So, well, yes, no, yeah.
Well, I'm very interested in this topic, and I wonder, you know, how we can drive policy change across the board. I mean, this problem with expiration dates for everything, every gadget we use, is really a problem, and I wonder how we could turn this into a trend and, you know, create public awareness, not just in the realm of composition, but also in the realm of scholarship and, you know, everyday uses of devices. But I'm also thinking about, you know, such topics as media archaeology, you know, and then, yeah, how do we deal with older devices, maintain them? There's also a cost associated with the maintenance of older devices, and yeah, in addition to incompatibilities, etc.
If I can say, it depends on us. We always have to remember that it depends on us, and we don't have to look to the other or to the large companies, what I mentioned in my abstract, that it's not the matter of large companies. If we're waiting for large companies, it never happens. There's a lot of problems because even as the university, for example, we can't buy old devices. We have to buy new devices. And the question is why? I'm now at home, I'm sorry, but in my electronic music studio at the academy, I have devices aged more than 50 years. So they are analog devices, you know, the spring reverbs and synthesizer from Oberheim, Yamaha, Roland, all that stuff. And it works. The problem is that we promote a different way of thinking. The new devices are easier and easier to explore. So when I have to spend a time learning how to communicate with device, I say, I don't have time. This is the matter of price. We can change. We can we pay the price? Because this is very, very high price. And I think that we have really say to ourselves, if we can't pay this very high price, finally the world will be destroyed. So don't just treat it very light. It's not very light. It's extremely serious. I was very scary when I see those pictures from Africa and the pictures from the Blade Runner. That's exactly the same. It's not like this is a fictitious and the another are real. Exactly the same. A child playing with enormous amount of computers.
Yeah.
It depends on us.
yeah, it depends on us, and it also, of course, depends on us spreading the word, creating a movement, creating awareness, and some of these pictures, and they, of course, don't just come out of Africa, but also Latin America, very Paraguay, etc. It's heartbreaking, and of course, a lot of the chemicals leak into our water supply, and water is also fresh water. There's a shortage, and so it's a chain reaction actually. And but can we learn, and how can we go against the big companies that have a lot of money and bribe politicians, and they lure us into consumerism to make money and so forth. And question is, how can we resist and stop it? And how can we, I mean, you're preaching to the choir myself, but I'm on board. But question is, how can others also come on board?
It's simple answer. Just do it. Just do it.
Okay.
Stop talking because we're talking about it. Just do it. I
Okay.
never get rid of any of my computers. I can use them. Simple. If more people start doing that, someone will see that it is possible. And of course, we can teach them how to do that stuff. Okay, I'm just out
Thank
here
you so
because
much.
we're out of time. Yes.
Well, everybody can do some soul searching, and maybe in the meantime, Pavel is ready for his presentation. Thank you so much for this provocative presentation. Let's all improve our lives.
Yes, thank you. I've joined only in the middle after some troubles with my computer, and I treat it as a sign that I need an upgrade and a new thing. But as I can hear, I need to think twice now. Okay, so I will show you my presentation in a very simplified version. And now everything should go smoothly. You should see it. The plan is to go with you through 5 stages. I will begin with discussing the ontology of music, then some economic issues. Then I will discuss very briefly some new concepts that I find particularly interesting and invigorating, maybe renewing for our musical discourse. I will show you an example, very broad one, just to trigger your imagination to think about the ideas that I would like to discuss. And then I will sum up everything and go through some conclusions, linking my argument to the title of my talk. That is why I would like to speak about music as a renewal and about musicking as recycling. To begin with, we need to start with the biggest question of music ontology. What is a musical work? So I would like just to mention that there are many opinions and theories about it. The first one, and perhaps the closest to the Polish audience, Polish readers and music thinkers, is an idea of a Polish phenomenologist, Roman Ingarden, from the beginning of the 20th century, who thought about music as an intentional object, an object that can be approached by the composer, the performer, and the listener, but yet it is somehow separate from them. It exists on its own, although it needs our work of imagination to actually exist and hence it is intentional. That means that Roman Ingarden believed that the actions of composers, performers, and listeners somehow approach the ideal of this intentional object and help us understand it better and better throughout the time. Then we have an approach of Nelson Goodman, an American musicologist who was a materialist when it comes to this matter, and tried to convince us that what actually exists is only the score. Only what is notated matters, he wants us to think, because everything else is just a matter of chance, more or less. Then we have this approach of Nicholas Cook, who wrote a seminar book, Music as Performance, and Cook puts emphasis on the reality of performance, that is, the way in which music exists and happens in performance. He treats score as only a script for these events that occur during the performance. And also we have an idealistic approach, a Platonic one, exemplified here by Peter Kivy. This approach says that a work of music is an idea. It exists in the universe of ideas, and composers does not actually create it, but only discover it. It is a big simplification to discuss these ideas in this manner, but I think that in our group we can just go through it very quickly. Now I would like to turn to economy, and a big question of economy, of music, of cultural economy, is how markets value music. Let me begin with some theory. So, economists tell us that there are different kinds of goods, and a musical work goes through different stages in its life cycle, I would say. It begins as a private good, then it becomes a club good, and finally it joins the group of goods that we call common pool resources. It is at the beginning, when it is composed, it is a private good. It can be given by a composer to someone particular, just as Frédéric Chopin did with his Fantasie Impromptue C# minor, and he just wrote it down in an album of a wealthy lady, and it was there for a long time until we discovered it again. So when the good is private, it is excludable and revalorous. We can exclude others from using it. We can keep it in a book. And it is revalorous because if I make use of it, if I keep it in my album, then someone else cannot do that. When music is performed publicly, it becomes a club good. Now it is excludable because we sell tickets. Not everyone can participate in a concert, but it has some features that make it non-revalorous or almost non-revalorous. Because when we listen with others, everyone listens the same. So, of course, differently, but everyone can approach music with the same chances. And finally, when the copyright expires, music becomes a common pool resource. And in this state, it is revalorous to some point because it is costly. Someone needs to pay for the performance. Someone needs to pay for printing the score. But it becomes more and more non-excludable because its performance is repeatable. You can do it once and again. You can record it and play the record multiple times. So virtually everyone on Earth can have access to a piece of music. And what is even better, when music enters the public or semi-public sphere, it begins to have positive externalities. That means that the more we consume music, the more we use it, the better for us. So the more people listen to music, the better for me. Especially if other people leave traces of their music consumption, music listening, or music performance in traces like reviews, essays, informal conversations, or perhaps recordings themselves, because performance to some extent at the same time consume and produce music. So this is the theory of economy when it comes to a musical work. What is the practice of markets? What are the market valuations that we can observe? Certainly, we can talk about scores and the publishers who pay for the notated music. We can speak about performances and concert venues who pay for the performances. We can speak about recordings and recording companies who pay for the recordings and earn from them and their incomes. And we can speak about listenings and about streaming platforms who actually pay for every single listening of music with the use of their interface. And there is copyright, which makes things a little bit more complicated. So copyright is a way that helps us to transfer some of the economic value from the secondary users of music to the primary users. An example from performers to composers. Copyright defines the relation between aesthetic or cultural value and economic value. Only when it is differentiated, then we can speak separately about the aesthetic and the economic value. What is more, legal creation of music commodities, for example, musical work or musical performance, music commodities mean here legal definitions of music, like a musical work and musical performance. So this legal creation of music commodities creates both an economic entity and a set of surplus values, for example, cultural or aesthetic values. That means that making the law helps us differentiate between the economic value, a commodity, and an aesthetic value or cultural value of the musical work. We can say that the cultural capital of music is this surplus value from the production of music commodities. Now let's turn to the new concepts in music thought and in humanities in general that help me and help us rethink our music practices. I will cite at the beginning intertextuality and a concept of Julia Kristeva. Kristeva used it and coined it in the field of literature studies, but it is now also used in music studies as well. The other concept is musicking. Christopher Small put emphasis on the fact that performing music and listening to music those are very creative activities. So they participate in the creation of music. It is not only reception of it, its creation. Then we have an idea of remix and read-write culture by Lawrence Lessig. Lessig is an advocate of relaxing of copyright, and he described culture in terms. Let's come back a little bit. He differentiates between two types of culture: read-only culture and read-write culture. For example, if we go for a concert, to a concert hall and listen to music and enjoy it, we participate in read-only culture. We only consume and we are not producing anything. But if we go for a concert and then write a review, share our experience with others on our social media, or if we make a short recording and mix it with something else, make use of it in our own work of art, then we participate in a read-write culture. We consume and produce at the same time. There is this new word, prosumption, that combines production and consumption in one idea. Then we have Lawrence Kramer and his thought that music is actually a collaboration between composer, performer, and listener. So he wants us to think about music as a constant collaboration of these two actors. I like this idea very much. And I will bring back Nicholas Cook, who in his more recent book discusses what he calls multimedia mentality, something different from autonomous mentality. He says that we can approach music as an autonomous art. We can be interested only in sounds, but we can also have this multimedia mentality and want to see music in a broader context. And he even argues that even for Beethoven, we can look at him in this multimedia mentality approach. So using these different ideas, we can actually think about musical heritage as something that is continuously evolving, changing, and shifting its shapes. I'm giving a quick example of Frédéric Chopin's Etude in E major, Opus 10, number 3. It exists in a score, as a written notation. It exists in multiple performances from its first days until now. It exists in multiple recordings, sometimes multiple recordings by the same pianists. People write texts to this melody and sing it, lyricizing it. People use this wonderful melody to transcribe it for different instruments like violin and piano. The melody can be transferred to dance styles and accompany dancing. Tango Corazon is an example of Etude in E major transformed into a dance culture. It can be sampled and transformed into something else. It can be played in a jazz rendering or a popular rendering. It also can become a part of video game. There is an example of that as well. I don't have time to dive into these examples, but these are things that are on YouTube, and I will give you a link to watch them in your free time. And to conclude, I would like to describe music as a participatory cultural practice. And I will give you 4 claims that sum up my considerations. The cultural practice of music under various political conditions may assume totalitarian, authoritative, or democratic character. I think that just as our social actions in societies can assume different characters of this kind, also our social actions of music can also have such character. The more democratic the cultural practice of music, the more it tends towards using its goods and resources creatively, engaging in constant interpretations and reinterpretations of its heritage. The more people use it, the more democratic is this approach. Musicking, that is playing with music of the past, recycling it through performances and listenings, keeps the musical past up to date, keeps it constantly modern and our own. And music, to me, is both a model and a vehicle of the renewal of culture. To renew a culture, we need to take its old elements and somehow transform it, just as we do when we do music. We are constantly dealing with things that are a matter of past, but we constantly renew it, putting it to use when musicking. This is why I think the title of our conference, Renewable Music, can also be understood in this way that music actually is a vehicle of renewal. It renews every time we do music and we become different through this practice, for good or for bad, but this is another question. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your inspiring presentation, and I think we can have time now for questions and comments. Well, in the meantime, I'd like to ask a question. So I really commend you for the idealism that's in your paper, but I just wonder about how that would work out for the professional musician versus the amateur musician. And so there's economy also in this mix. So I'm just thinking, you know, teaching in the United States where music students have to pay a huge price for becoming professionals. And then we have this sharing, you know, everything is supposed to be free and available online. And of course, music students themselves hurt themselves by illegally Xeroxing music and, you know, downloading music that is copyright protected, and they will in the end have a lot of student debt and then end up driving an Uber to make a living and working at Starbucks. Publishers go out of business, recording companies go out of business because nobody is buying their products. They're actually circumventing, you know, the system. And so I think it would be, you know, great if everything could be for free and everybody could participate, but in real life, it may not work that way, and a professional composer may not really have a lot of time to compose because they have to find other ways to earn a living. So
no, I'm not even a composer. I'm a music critic, so I'm even worse than that, and a music researcher. So I'm, you know, it is a worse position than actually a composer in this market. But I think that you didn't catch what I was arguing for. because when I was discussing these positive externalities, it is not an argument to make everything free. It is an argument for state to fund art and art activities, because if it is, if a cultural practice or a consumption gives positive externalities, it means that through using it, we are giving something to other people and they don't pay for it. So someone else need to pay, and this someone else, actually, it is the best if it is a common effort of everyone who pays taxes. So this is my argument.
Okay, that's very nice, except in the United States, for instance, where I'm based, that probably will never be the case, right? That they will pay. And even, I'm originally from Germany. I look at that country, and where are the symphony orchestras that I grew up with? They have been shutting down right and left. And so there's a trend that is unfortunate. I would happily pay taxes to cover, tuition and to cover, arts, all the arts, not just music. But also the other question I want to throw in is what I've been seeing a lot, in society is the passive consumption of music as a result of multitasking. People love to do multiple things, and that leads to a very superficial engagement with music, listening. Everything floats by, nothing really sticks or goes deep. And that's something to factor in as well. And of course, a participatory music culture would go against that. And I would endorse that very much, but it's a challenge. But we have another question.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, it's me. Thank you very much for your very interesting paper. And I would like to tell you only one thing, that I totally agree with you as far as renewability of music is concerned. It's exactly what I mean and what I think about what music means. It is, it is very typical musicological understanding, and I share your approach. Yes. Music is performed, and this act of performing for from Bach or Chopin anyway, in very different styles and models, it is exactly what I mean the renewability of music is. So thank you very much for your contribution. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I would like just to add to that it is my argument goes in this direction. Well, it can be backed up by some numbers, and it actually can be developed in a way that can influence the policymakers to, for example, I know that you are in the US and you are you have very different problems when it comes to arts than we have in Europe. But in Europe, for example, in Poland, we have a program that pays for new music compositions, but does not give any money to writing review of this new composition or somehow recording it. So then new music is composed, performed once, and just goes into the past. So I would argue that we need to take care of everything. We need to pay for the music compositions, for the performance, and for the reviews and recordings to make it actually to make it possible for the positive externalities to occur. Okay, thanks.
We have another question. That should be the last one. Yes.
Okay, it's me. So thank you very much for your very interesting presentation and giving so many perspective of what a musical work is. And yeah, some I heard about more or less, but so actually I would like to know more about this collaborative concept. You mentioned you like it, but what would be your concept of a musical work? Did you work on it?
I like this. Yeah, well, actually, it's not original, but I somehow agree with Kramer. In his book, The Thought of Music, he writes about, he begins with Nicholas Cook and his model of music as performance, but he adds to it the activity of listener. So he says that the creation of music begins with the composer. It is continued with the performer, and it is put to some rest with the listener, who actually listens, creates the musical meaning, completes the process. And of course, there are many listeners and many listenings and many meanings of the work that it can achieve. But with listener who it ideally writes down his interpretation, musical meaning is put to some rest. It is he writes using Lacanian term that it is a quilting point, like in a quilt comforter, you know, that you put a needle in the material to put what is inside in place. So this moment when we make an interpretation, we kill this meaning in one place, and if someone else does it, he puts another needle in a different place, which changes the whole thing a little bit. But those needles are there for the people who are after us. So
it stays in the piece.
It stays in the piece, yeah. So it is a continuous process, and people who consume a composed piece who also add something from themselves to the meaning of the piece itself. So it continues in eternity, and thankfully we can enjoy it.
It is Nicholas Kramer, yeah? Nicholas Kramer?
Lawrence Kramer.
Lawrence. Oh, interesting.
So thank you so much.
And you, I'm sorry. Thank you. It was very, great presentation.
Yeah, we can connect afterwards, so I can answer.
Yeah, there's always the chat option. Thank you so much, Paweł. And now we'll move on to our last speaker, Marcin Strzelecki. He's a music theorist and composer and instrumentalist, digital multimedia artist, music critic, graphic designer, calligrapher, electronics specialist, and programmer. He's associated with the Penderecki Academy of Music in Krakow, and he lectures on harmony and counterpoint as well as music analysis and uses computer tools. Today, he will speak about music, AI, and energy. Please welcome Marcin Strzelecki.
Thank you very much. Those are only activities which it happens for me to gain for life professionally, but there are some more. No, just a joke. Okay, so thank you letting me in to jump into the conference in the last moment. I hope my presentation is visible. I'm really happy. This presentation is quite simple because the idea is very fresh, but I hope I will contribute a little bit. Among my many diverse activities, maybe even too many, I have over 20 years of experience in artificial neural networks, which I first utilized in my master thesis when analyzed Luthusławski music. So I follow the development of this technology, and I can put it into the context, I think, of renewability in music also. So first thing I would like to mention and to point out that the generation of music fundamentally relies on kinetic energy. A sound is a physical action that requires movement. So we have the energy already involved in our music production. For example, the movement of water was used such as in the organ of Zadar in Croatia. We have water organ. Water pumps air into the pipes. So kinetic energy, movement. And traditionally in music culture, this energy was provided by human performers who physically interacted with the instruments to produce music. The 20th century brought significant changes with the widespread availability of electrical energy, which began to play a crucial role in music production. This technological advancement paved the way for electronic instruments and amplifiers, reducing the physical strain on human performers and enabling new forms of musical expression. And today, of course, the computers have further transformed the landscape of music creation. They not only facilitate the composition and production process, but also introduce possibilities for generating music through artificial intelligence today. This shift from human to electronic and digital sources of energy reflects a broader evolution in how we create and experience music, highlighting both the opportunities and challenges posed by relying on technology in the realm of art and culture. This is one of my generative projects. As you can see, we do not need even a big computer. Just a small microcontroller is enough to generate in lots of sound. Like, for example, in this project, average 300 sounds per second in average. So 300 sounds, 300 musical notes per second. This actually is a kind of joke that shows how easy it is today to generate many sounds. And the question still is important, what for? Before we dive into the topic of AI and music, we have to answer the fundamental question. The question is, what kind of music we have in mind? What we consider here as a music? This is absolutely important. The difficulty of generating depends on the type of things being generated. It changes a lot. In the realm of automatic and autonomous music generation, I distinguish between three main types of outcomes that can be produced. The first type is essentially random and unstructured sound, which can be compared to the natural noises or chaotic audio generated without any specific intention or pattern. And you can say, how is it possible that in music we accept it? Yes. For example, for instance, many pieces by John Cage, as well as our yesterday's hero, Marek Hołoniewski, serve here as excellent examples in this regard. We have here the flagship project by Marek, his signature project called Passage. And here the sounds are really not important. What is important, what is the heart of this project is the procedure. The procedure is interesting, maybe interesting. The procedure is in the middle, in the center. The sounds are any sound goes. Sorry, any sounds go. And just there's a long preparation. Whatever sounds go. This project has a premiere in the Warsaw Autumn 2001. You can read about it in the project book, concert program book. And the second type involves creating something regular and patterned, such as music with repetitive and predictable sequences. And I have an example of this. This is, for instance, minimalist music in the style of Michael Nyman, let's see. And it can be generated using a relatively small portion of computer code, just like 80 lines of simple code. This effectively captures the repetitive and structured nature of sound compositions without the need for advanced AI techniques. Okay, we can generate it forever. The third and most sophisticated type of music generation aims to produce highly specific and intricate compositions that closely resemble existing works, such as, for example, Mozart's symphony. This form of music generation requires a deep understanding of musical structure and style. So we have example here. Probably you have heard about that. This is in the internet, you can find information that somebody finished Schubert's symphony, the unfinished, so-called unfinished symphony, using AI. This person claims that it was an autonomous procedure run by a smartphone of a famous Chinese producent. So if you again think it is impressive, try to hold your emotions in check for a moment. I will explain later. Now, in the context of AI, according to that, we have three different situations. In the first category of music generation, artificial intelligence is entirely unnecessary. In the second category, while AI is a possibility, but it's not required. Simple computer code can suffice to produce regular patterned music. It is only the third category that automated and autonomous procedure truly demands a form of intelligence, creating a piece that closely mimics the complexity of a, for example, classical symphony. This requires sophisticated AI and able to produce an intricate musical patterns and styles. I must say something controversial now. Achieving this level of autonomous composition remains an unfulfilled challenge still, underscoring the limitations of current AI capabilities in replicating the depth of nuances of traditional music. To emphasize this point further, there is no AI system capable of composing music in the traditional sense, which can convince a discerning listener rooted in the specific culture. There are notable examples of deceptive claims in the field of AI music. Two prominent cases illustrate this point. In the 90s, David Cope developed the experiments in musical intelligence, so-called EMI, which raised questions about the authenticity and originality of computer-generated compositions. More recently, you have this attempt of finishing Schubert. Also, we have something about Beethoven's 10th Symphony. All this raises a completely new problem, the authenticity of artificial intelligence. Authenticity of something which is false by definition, yeah? Many weak composers are now presenting their own works as a result of AI because it's what people are most interested in today. The source of the problem is that technicians are not musicians and are not sensitive to musical nuances, and also musicians do not know much about possibilities of contemporary technology, so it is really easy to cheat. All these aspects reflect the current limitations of AI producing highly sophisticated music. Human input remains indispensable to achieving acceptable quality and coherence in the music. Generated material requires significant human intervention and manual corrections. This is the case of the Goldberg variations we heard yesterday morning. Try to generate, because it was claimed that it was generated in Suno. Try to think and invent such a prompt for Suno that will generate something similar to Bach, and I promise I owe you a bottle of good wine. It's not possible, simply. So it requires corrections. So here we have the situation where the computer and AI is kind of assistant, but not autonomous system generating music from beginning till the end. Many people today are asking the question, will AI compose music in the future? And the first step is to precisely define what kind of music we are talking about. I argue that perfectly imitating traditional music deeply associated with a particular cultural identity, will never be fully realized through AI. There are several reasons for this. One of them is the limited amount of data available for specific, very narrow styles of music that resonate with native users and communities. This is, for example, let's take a Neapolitan Rococo opera. This is such a little amount of pieces that the learning data is too small, okay? And capturing the essence of such style requires not only a deep understanding, but also a vast amount of data. So, moreover, and this is the main statement, moreover, the process demands enormous amount of energy and substantial investments in the equipment, experimentation, and research. For example, generating counterpoint in the style of Palestrina would require a level of sophistication and resource allocation that is prohibitively expensive. The costs associated with these efforts are unlikely to be recouped as the return on investment for creating such specialized and culturally nuanced music. Nobody will pay for this because to convince like 5 or 3% of the last listeners who are skeptic, the investment will not pay off never, okay? So it's enough to convince 80% of audience, but not 100. And this brings us to the topic of energy, which is intrinsically linked to the development of functioning of artificial intelligence. First, understanding an AI involves exploring the concept of artificial neural networks, because this is the main technique for AI today. The neural networks, there are many techniques, but neural networks are the most efficient and effective. These networks are designed to recognize patterns, make decisions, like medical diagnosis, also profiling in internet. We are profiled by this. And so here is a model of such a network, really small model, where the features are recognized as particular class of objects. But also in generating word images of music, today's networks function as machines that continue a given chain of symbols called prompt, but they do this with a specific context. The context is very important here. The awareness of the context, the attention, is crucial for new architecture of so-called deep neural networks. As you can see, this is the groundbreaking article by a group of scientists from 2017. This is famous GPT architecture, which implements the idea of attention. You can see in the middle of the diagram the attention modules. The single neuron is basically a very simple mathematical operation. Adjusting the weights, you can see the weights on the left, weights of the connections is the core process of learning, much like the human brains, where some connections become stronger while others are weakened during the learning process. It's the same modeled in neural networks, artificial neural networks. The weights being adjusted during learning are so-called model parameters. Contemporary commercial models have a vast number of such parameters, like trillions of parameters, as you can see. This amount can be visualized if you cover the old town in Krakow with little squares of 1 millimeter size, 1 millimeter squares. This will be roughly about 2 trillion such squares. This is the amount of parameters for such a network, and it's growing, it's in progress. So as you can see, the mere idea seems surprisingly simple. And in fact, it dates back about 70 years ago, with the first neural networks being constructed in the 50s. However, it is only in recent years that we have reached a sufficient technological level to implement this idea and fully harness its potential. And the very merit. Deep network operation requires significant computational power, which translates to high energy consumption. The balance between harnessing AI's capabilities and managing its energy demands is a critical consideration as we continue to integrate artificial intelligence into our daily lives and creative practices. To put the energy demands of AI into perspective, you have here some examples. A few days ago, Professor Konrad Zaciłowski gave a lecture about that and during a Krakow Reset conference. For example, your Google search requires energy which would allow a little bulb to light for 20 minutes. The GPT question requires energy for 2 hours of light. This is also scary. Also, the big techs like Google and Facebook together consume more power than United Kingdom power consumption per year more. So this is really a huge amount of power. The implication is clear. If you were to limit the extensive energy use associated with advanced technology, we could potentially have free energy available. The debate over AI energy footprint is crucial as we consider the environmental impact of our technological advancements. Alternative. I work with Professor Szaciłowski because he's a specialist in so-called unconventional computing. He claims that he takes two tomatoes, vegetables, tomatoes, and a couple loops of wire, and he can make very basic computer out of everything. He says that computers are everywhere. If you make a broader sense of information processing, the computers can be built from almost everything. So I will not develop this. If you have questions, we can say about it later. But the real question is, does music need it all? This raises important question. Do we truly need all these advancements when it comes to music making? As we explore the potential of these alternative computing methods, it's essential to consider the necessity and impact. Are they providing meaningful contributions to society, or are they simply technological curiosities? Balancing innovation with relevance and addressing genuine human needs will be crucial as we continue to integrate these emerging technologies into our lives. Directing towards final conclusions of my paper, it's important to note that generating music is fundamentally different from making music or creating music. Composing procedures involves designing algorithms that produce sound, whereas composing sounds is about crafting in the music itself, crafting in music, not crafting in procedures. These activities require distinct skills and different kinds of imagination. This is important, different kinds of imagination. Take for example, for instance, again, Marek Chłoniewski or John Cage or other composers, brilliant creators of procedural systems. Their imagination is about procedures. If you were to adhere to the early 20th century definition of composer, you would need to acknowledge that composing procedures fundamentally is different from composing the music itself. In conclusion, regardless of the future trajectory of technology, music remains an essential part of our lives. I mean, music making. It plays a crucial role in maintaining our mental and physical health, fostering social connections and interactions, shaping our identities, and serving as a vessel for values. While we can build robots to perform physical exercises, such innovations do not contribute to our own development or health. Similarly, machines that produce music do not inherently make us healthier or happier. The true joy and fulfillment come through the fact of making music. Engaging in musical activities and nurturing that type of imagination is what brings us happiness. It is the creation and personal involvement in music that enrich our lives, emphasizing the importance and maintaining our direct relationship with this art. This sentiment is beautifully captured by William James, the prominent figure at the dawn of modern psychology. He says, "I do not sing because I'm happy. I am happy because I sing." I would like to finish with this statement, but I thought that about the renewable music, I have just 2 slides more. I can see that it's 90 minutes of my presentation, so I have 1 minute. I took this torch, garden torch made of bamboo tree. This summer, I tried to make such a project, and I made several flutes out of this. Also, the procedure was not to use electricity at all. So I used only knives, only sandpaper, and some simple device. And I tried to play this flute for a while before at the paper, but it doesn't work. So I will put the sample of this music into the chat right now, so you can listen at your home, at your computer. Thank you very much for your attention. This is the rack I played during the recording. Okay.
thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Are there any questions or comments? Not right now. I want to just start with one that pertains to your very last statement about your homemade flute that didn't really use any electricity, but I wonder if you thought about the aspect of virtual electricity that was involved in the making of your flute. For instance, the knife, the production of the knife used electricity. So it's this, like with our water footprint, we have a virtual water footprint, takes so much water to produce coffee or blue jeans and so forth. And the same thing is true with making your bamboo flutes.
Yes, this is the same with our food. It requires transportation, it requires pesticides, herbicides, and so on. It requires a lot of water, of course. And I thought about this, yes, that probably this flute comes from, maybe from China, maybe it was grown there. I thought about this chain of transportation, but it's the same thing as Mateusz claimed, that as we already have this device, as we have already this object, we can use it in a better or worse way. We can use it as an instrument, or we can just throw it away after using it. So when it's appeared in the world, I would like to make a best use of this. Okay, right. So making instrument is something, in my opinion, quite noble. So I do not throw away this torch. I made like 30 such flutes, but this is the best.
I also thought that your comment on using vegetables, tomatoes, mushrooms as computers was quite interesting. And there's so much new information about plant intelligence and how plants, for instance, and mushrooms, fungi, sense sound and emit sound and so forth. Yeah. So we have a whole bunch of questions now. Well, we'll start with the first hand raised. Yes, please.
Jagoda. Thank you, Sabine. Yes, so thank you for a very interesting presentation. I must say I really liked the conclusions. Like, I'm not very much the computer person, especially in the recent years. I know this is there and we also can meet thanks to these devices. But you mentioned this human factor at the end, and also the instrument. So I wanted to thank you actually for this nice conclusion. And I think really, thinking from the composing, like the computers are really present. And I spoke today about this notation, and people really write in computers music using computer software. And this is not just a tool to write music, but they want to listen to it. And then you have like very weird rhythms, and it's not about Brian Ferneyhough rhythms, but there is so much like a negative, things of using computer, like for the creativity or instrument fragility, like instead of playing yourself instrument and trying how it is, and then it doesn't matter if you use paper or computer when it is done consciously, but you can see, these rhythms, like without understanding of performance techniques and musicality, a human musicality, the human at the end plays the instrument, like the flute. And I know, of course, there is also electronic music, but I was very thankful for this human element at the end. And that really we have joy by singing and playing instruments and as humans. And
Thank you.
So thank you for this beautiful conclusion.
Oh, it's really kind of you.
We don't hear you, Sabine.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. Well, we can go on to the next question then.
Yes. Thank you very much for your paper. It's extremely inspiring, I would say. They are very thoughtful, I think. And you ask some questions, among others, the question about the idea of using AI, for example. And your conclusion was just we should, as composers, we should produce music and not these procedures. But I would like to ask you, don't you think that these old procedures are just for game, for such play? We are all listening to music. We are playing with such procedures and some, with computer games and so on and so forth. So, creating music is not only just for music itself, but all this context we are interested in. This is the first thing. Another thing is, I think that the AI about you mentioned is just to. The only reason is just to understand the secret of human creativity, not other reasons. Because you never I don't see any other sensible reasons for AI. So thank you very much for your paper, and maybe you have some thoughts about my question.
Yes, the first is that playing with procedures is also kind of creativity, but I wanted to say that this is some kind of different kind of imagination. There is a chess imagination. People can see chessboard. There is a visual imagination. People can see what they are going to draw, and it comes out from their heads. So in my case, if I have to describe myself, I am musician because I have musical imagination. The sounds are going through my head from here and there. But of course, when I was doing the artificial intelligence almost 20 years ago, it was kind of craft for me because I did it by hand. I programmed this from the very scratch, from the very beginning. I didn't use any ready-made, because today most people are using ready-made programs or services online, and this is not. They are just harnessing the possibilities, but they do not go into the mechanism. When I was doing the artificial or neural networks, I was inside that. I was crafting with the networks, doing this by hand almost. But today people are just clicking buttons on the screen, this is completely different. But the second thing it was very interesting, but I forgot. Could you please remind me? The second thing.
Discovering human creativity.
Yes. Of course, the creativity is a mystery, and of course, this is one of goals because in the book, the last part of the book is mainly answering the question why we are doing this, why are we fascinated by this, and it's discovering or answering the question whether or not creativity can be formalized. This is the question. Can we find a magic formula, like a stone of philosophers for creating music that will happen magically almost? Yeah. So this is the question. Is it formalizable? Can we write a formula to this or not? Maybe there is a kind of mystery. So people are thinking now, is it mystery? It will remain mystery forever, or maybe we will solve this mystery. So this is one of the questions. The other question, or maybe the reason why we are doing this is objectivity. In 20th century, I claim that 20th century music is full of tending to be objective. People are creating music from inside to outside, and they are saying, this is not me, this is procedure. This is very common. There are a lot of people who say that this is very important to make this process objective, outside myself. John Cage, Tim Johnson in America, but also Pierre Boulez say like that. A lot of composers say that there is a value in objectivity. But also, if we'll try to find the reasons why we are doing this, there is a simple reason like money. Also money, we have to take into account, there is a chapter about this. The chapter is called Zysk i uznanie, że ludzie to robią dla zysku i uznania. So people are doing this for prestige and for money. Also, they think that if they've solved, because in classical music, we do not realize that in popular music, there's a huge amount of money involved in popular music. This is millions of dollars, really. even billions of dollars are involved in the music business. In our classical music, it's not so important, the gaining from music, but the big techs, big companies trying to solve this because it will bring a lot of money of income as a reward of the effort of creating the popular hit, for example. I think we should also take it into account. But as I said, there are many other reasons. There's also a mystery. For me, it's important because creating something with generating something with artificial intelligence or creating artificial intelligence tools, it has something like an alchemist mystery to me. Also, it's very related to the myth of the very old cultural topic, which is controlling the life itself. Erwin Schrödinger wrote a lot about life. Also, we can see this in Frankenstein's story, that it's like creating something artificial which moves. It resembles something which is life. So if we can create, for example, machines which are independent beings, is something like possessing the mystery of life itself. It goes such a deeper, in my opinion. Also, if you know, in Japan, in Shinto religion, they believe that something which moves, probably it has soul inside. The animism, it's called animism. So,
Okay, do you understand generation is the same as creativity?
I distinguish this strongly.
Yeah.
There are a lot of reasons to do this. People create, the artists create, and machines or procedures generate. And I explain it in the first chapters from the etymology and also from the ancient myth of the Genesis. Also, we have in our Nicene symbol, the Sobór Nicejski 325, Nicene symbol, they was argue whether the Christ was generated or was made. It's something, this in geneteta no poetete, it was in Greek.
Jest stworzony.
Sorry, właśnie. Homoiosis in Greek, czy jest współistotny ojcu in Greek, or homosis. It was the difference. This is the iota. They argue about iota. So they distinguished zrodzony czy stworzony. Generating comes from Sanskrit word geni.
Yeah.
Geni means to born, to give a birth, to beget. So generation is something similar to natural processes, but creation is something subjective.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we don't have time for another question because there's a roundtable concluding session that should have already started 8 minutes ago. But I want to thank to every speaker for a wonderful last panel. And congratulations.
Let me thank you very much. Thank you. Let me close the session. Our conference has come to an end, and I think we can part with a sense of duty well done. We heard many interesting, well-prepared papers and witnessed interesting discussions. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Polish Composers Union for carrying out the whole rather complicated project. It was very complicated because the Composers Union organized 4 concerts and all this. It was not so simple. So thank you very much for this project. And I would like to thank all the speakers, in particular Professors Maki Solomonos and Marek Hołoniewski, for all the inspiration from their lectures. I would like to thank the project partners and composers for their participation in the panel on the issue of the renewability of music. Special thanks go to Agnieszka Cieślak-Krupa for her months of work in organizing this conference. I hope that we will still have the opportunity to meet eco-musicologically, and that it will be in some cozy academic room So thank you very much. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you.
So if I may, I would also like to take a moment to thank all our wonderful speakers and attendees. Thank you very much for your contributions and for all the insightful discussions. I would also like to once again acknowledge our or the organizers of this conference and share with you this board just to just to go with the formalities. So thank you to all our organizers, financial supporters, media partners, and the media patrons. You can see all the logos on the screen now. Thank you so much for your support. So sadly, this conference marks the final joint endeavor within our project. However, I'm convinced that the collaborations we have started will endure, and we will find means to work together on future projects. As a reminder, we plan to publish materials from this conference online, probably on YouTube, as a reference for further research. Also, if you wish to contact a specific speaker, all email addresses can be found in the Book of Abstracts. And I will also share with you all the links that were sent on chat by our speakers, so that you have access to all the materials. So thank you once again. It was a pleasure to meet you all and spend this last 3 days with you. Thank you, and have a great end of the week.
Thank you all.
Very
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Muchas
Thank you.
gracias.
Thank you.
Dziękuję, thank you.
Thank you.